Hey, it's Camila Stevenson, and around here we do talk about wealth. And right now, there is a wealth transfer already happening right under people's noses, and it's been misunderstood, it's been sensationalized, and honestly, it's been dismissed far too long. All while the systems involved pretend they're not ready for what's actually unfolding. And you better open up your eyes if you want to be a part of this, because the windows of opportunity are going to get smaller and smaller. What we're living through right now is a structural shift in how money works, how it's created, how it's debased, and how wealth quickly moves during that process. And whether someone believes that or not doesn't actually change what's really happening. Currency transitions don't announce themselves at the beginning. They don't come with a headline that says this is the reset. They unfold slowly through policy choices, debt expansion, and balance sheet decisions. And the announcement, if it comes at all, shows up at the very end once positioning is already done. And I'm telling you that positioning is taking place. And that is why so many people miss it. Now, before we go any further, this is not financial advice. I'm not telling you what to buy based off this information. This is for educational perspective only, and it's meant to help you understand the system that you're operating inside of. And let me just say this, because I look at the comments all the time. I am not AI. I am really here talking to you right now. And there's a lot of people who think my videos are AI. I have never done an AI video. It is always me speaking, and I love to be here. And I just laugh because the comments are so funny to me. It's a good time to me always. Now, listen, if you appreciate these type of breakdowns, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below as we go. Let me know what you're thinking about as we move into a global reset. And let me know if you're still buying the dips or if you're a little afraid right now. All right, let's get into it. To understand why this matters, right? We have to talk about the environment that we're actually in and not the one that people think we're in, because there are different environments that people think we're in. Now, we're living in what's called a fiscally dominant regime. That sounds technical, but the idea is very simple. Debt has grown faster than real economic output for a long time. And once an economy reaches that point, monetary policy stops being about stability and starts being about survival. Governments don't have the option to meaningfully pay the debt down. They also don't have the option to default without destabilizing the entire system. So what's left is expansion, liquidity expansion, credit creation, currency debasement, not because policymakers want to, but because the math leaves them with no alternative. And this is why asset holders are structurally favored in this environment, while savers and currency holders will fall behind. This is not opinion. This is how every debt-heavy monetary system behaves once it reaches this stage. And this is the part that confuses a lot of people, is that they expect this kind of shift to show up as an immediate collapse, a crash, a reset button, or some dramatic moment. But that's not how currency systems actually change. They change through purchasing power erosion, through asset inflation, through widening gaps between those who hold things and those who hold currency. Over the last few years alone, an unprecedented amount of new money has been created, not just in the US, but across every major developed economy. And that doesn't mean that everything collapses tomorrow. What it does mean is that the monetary regime has already changed. And once that threshold is crossed, there is no clean path back to the old system. This is why waiting for certainty is so dangerous. By the time the shift becomes obvious to everyone, the advantages of early positioning are already gone. And that's what we're seeing right now. Now, let me explain why this doesn't always show up as a crash yet. Okay, this is where a lot of people get tripped up. They hear currency reset or wealth transfer, and they expect it to look like a crisis, a crash, a panic, something again dramatic that forces everyone to pay attention. But that is almost never how these transitions begin. Currency systems don't usually fail all at once. They weaken slowly. The pressure shows up first in places most people don't connect to money at all, like asset prices rising faster than wages, savings buying less and less over time, and the cost of living creeping up even when the economy is supposedly doing fine. That's why you can have a situation where the real economy feels strained, but financial markets are near all-time highs. That's not contradiction. That is a signal. When currency is being diluted, it doesn't disappear. It flows into assets, stocks, real estate, commodities. Anything that can absorb excess liquidity tends to rise first. So instead of visible collapse, what you get is a quiet distortion. People feel like they're working harder, but they're falling behind. They feel like prices keep going up, but explanations don't quite add up. And they're told everything is temporary, even as the trend continues year after year. That's how currency transitions actually unfold. So the reset doesn't announce itself at the beginning. It becomes obvious only at the end, once the purchasing power damage has already been done. And this is why waiting for a clear again crisis moment is a huge mistake. By the time the system breaks loudly, the wealth transfer has already occurred and it's behind closed doors. And so the advantage is never in reacting. That's what most people are doing. They react to this stuff. The moves have already been set in stone. So again, the advantage isn't to react to what's being unfolded in front of you. It's in understanding the direction early enough to prepare. Now, most people are never taught to think about money at this level. And so if you don't understand how currency systems work, how debt cycles function, or how liquidity actually moves, you're forced to rely on headlines and media, and they are always late. And that's why I'm a big believer in financial education over prediction. And so I often recommend Stock Up University because it focuses on how markets really work, structure, cycles, risk, positioning, not the hypes and all the emotional reactions that come with retail. I've gone through it myself, and I'm telling you, it's one of the cleanest, most practical frameworks I've seen for building real financial literacy. If you want that foundation, the link is in the description, and you can use my code if it still gives you access to a discount. All right, now let's get back to the wealth transfer mechanism, because this is the core of everything. I want to talk about this in a way that makes sense, especially for people who don't fully understand the wealth transfer itself, because wealth doesn't disappear during currency transitions. It moves, and it always moves in the same direction. When currency is debased, the loss doesn't show up evenly across society. It concentrates in people who hold cash, rely on savings, or depend entirely on wages that can't keep up. At the same time, purchasing power flows towards people who own assets. This is why wealth transfers, again, don't feel dramatic. They feel gradual. Most people don't wake up one day and realize they've lost. They slowly notice that the same amount of effort buys them less, that their savings feel pointless, that prices rise faster than explanations. Meanwhile, asset owners experience the opposite effect. Their balance sheets expand, their purchasing power adjusts upward with inflation, and they're able to preserve value while the currency quietly absorbs the cost of the system's debt. This isn't a moral statement, it's a structural one. Currency dilution doesn't solve debt problems, it redistributes them. And every major currency transition in history has followed the same exact pattern. Those who stay in currency lose purchase power. Those who hold real assets preserve it, and the gap widens until it becomes obvious. This is why wealth transfers don't require bad decisions to happen. They happen even to responsible, disciplined people who simply stayed in the wrong category of money for too long. That is the uncomfortable truth. The system doesn't announce when it's extracting value from savers. It just does it slowly enough that most people adjust instead of reacting. By the time the transfer becomes visible to everyone, it is already complete. And when I say that, I really want you to understand what actually carries into the next system, because this is where the conversation needs to be practical without becoming reactive, because not everybody survives a currency transition the same way. What carries forward isn't based on popularity, it's based on durability. Historically, the assets that preserve value through monetary transitions share a few common traits. First, they're scarce in a way that policy can't easily change, meaning they don't rely on someone's decision to print more. Second, they exist independently of any single currency system, meaning that they hold value regardless of what unit of account they're priced in. And then third, they remain useful on the other side of transition. That's why tangible assets have always mattered. Assets like real estate, productive land, and precious metals don't depend on confidence in a currency to exist. They carry value forward because they are real, limited, and necessary. Empires change, currencies change, those assets remain. But here's the part that's new in this cycle. The next financial system is not just physical, it's digital, which means a second category begins to matter. Selective digital infrastructure assets, not hype-driven tokens, not speculation, but digital assets that solve real structural problems in the system being built.